Hello, I am Megan Wisner-Quinlan, and I am so excited to be working on this gratitude challenge. My prompt today is home, and so I'm going to do something that's very house related. And one of the things that I've gathered to possibly use is some vintage postcards with images of buildings, castles, something like that. If you're not much of an artist in terms of sketching and drawing, any kind of imagery that you could find in a magazine or vintage photos can work. I'm going to be using some vintage people who are going to be kind of, family members, again, gathering at a home. I have a collection of vintage photographs, so I might go there. I don't really have a plan, so I'm just going to gather some things and see where I end up. I have made some botanicals with some Dina Wakley stamps and stencils. There are directions for how to do this on my IGTV, but it's really fun, and I have been adding these to everything. I have some watercolor circles that Christy of Soul Positive has gotten everybody to start making. They're addictive. And I have some vintage stamps because I love everything vintage. And then lastly, I just have a collection of vintage ephemera, music notes. I also have some Dina Wakley collage paper because I tend to use that on a lot. This one is a new one, and it's just words. So I love using text in everything that I work on. So we might use some of that as well. So to get started, I am going to start on a piece of white cardstock. It doesn't have to be white. And I'm going to be basically kind of building an assemblage on there. The first thing I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to try and just do a very kind of simple, generic house structure and see if I like it. Because as I said, I don't always have a plan when I sit down. I know I want to do something with homes, but I am not the best artist, not yet, in terms of drawing and sketching. So when I make my houses, I make them very loose and sketcherly. I might put some building windows and kind of almost like a old farmhouse. And when I do these windows, I just use a Stabilo pencil, which is a water-soluble pencil, but you can smudge it, which I really love the effects of what it gives you. It kind of can make you look better than you are. Some people refer to it as the magic pencil, and I have found that to be true. So, I mean, I literally have not changed how I draw houses since probably grade school. But when I do it with this pencil, I kind of really like how it comes out. So, if you can see that, it comes out really cool. So, what I think is I might actually use this as my house. I'm not sure, but I'm going to kind of tear it as opposed to cut it. And I've torn a little bit, but that's okay because I'm going for a vintage look. So, a little bit of distressed imagery is kind of what I'm going for anyway. So if some of it just makes it look a little more organic, a little more authentic when you do that. So I like my house for now. Again, I might not end up using it, but I like it. And then I'm going to use a piece of craft cardstock as my actual substrate. So the idea is I'm going to create an assemblage on a piece of cardstock. And then this assemblage can be used in many ways. Okay, it could be used on a journal page if you like it. It can also live on its own in a frame if you want. I tend to put my assemblages in my art journals. And again, I also have on my IGTV some tutorials on how I make assemblages, but it's basically this practice. So now I'm going to just start building right away. And no pun intended, right? Because that's a house. And I have all kinds of just vintage strips of paper. A lot of these are from the Tim Holtz line. He's got so much great vintage papers and images, and I'm just going to kind of again tear them. I will give you one tip with tearing. I don't like this white portion of the paper, so the best way to eliminate that is to tear away from you. So I'm going to tear the paper downwards, and it eliminates that white mark. If you've ever struggled with that, that is the way to defeat it. So I'm just going to start placing everything right away. And I try not to think about anything too much, because sometimes the thinking can make you second guess yourself, and it can take away from the fun. And I'm just going to start layering, you know. Not everything has to live on this little piece. I like when stuff is kind of floating outside, because to me it just seems a lot more interesting. And I also personally don't mind if text is upside down or right side up. Again, it just, you know, it kind of adds to the uniqueness of what we're looking at. All right, so I kind of like that. Now what I've was thinking could be fun is using my house as a pocket, and I could in fact insert a couple in and out, and then you could further, you know, embellish this if you wanted. But so when I go to glue this house, I am going to do it in such a way that there's quite a bit of room for inserting the picture in and out. I'm going to just glue these kind of loosely. Ooh, I love that. That's really cool too. Just loosely. It doesn't really matter, because I'm gonna keep building on this concept. I might break it up. Maybe I'll break it up with some floral designs here. Just and this is kind of how I start layering. I just go and start layering so that, you know, I'm not worrying too much about how things look, because you can really overthink it, and I find that that's actually where you run into problems, when you're overthinking. When you just start doing it, your mind isn't allowed to think too much, and then I do a much better job. Okay, so now I'm really kind of getting further along with my image. I also sometimes in this process, like vintage fabrics, burlaps can be fun, especially burlap, because if you go to cut some burlap just for an additional texture, let's say you cut a little piece. The fun thing with burlap, it's so loosely woven that you can really start pulling everything apart. And again, just adding, you know, more texture to your art. I mean, that could even look cool as the roof of the house, maybe. I don't know. But things to think about. It could cover the house. It's just another way to kind of add some texture to your collage. I'm still not sure about it though. I think I'm going to add some down here. I also like to use this Distress Medium by Tim Holtz. The Crazing is the one that I use. It is just one of the strongest adhesives that I have ever encountered, and it dries real quickly. So it's good for fast thinkers. You don't have to think too much about it. I also grabbed some vintage washi tape too, some vintage looking washi tape. And that's always fun because you can just tear it and add it to your layers. So I'm going to do that a little bit with different ones. This one is like a calendar one, which is kind of cool. Just building the layers on my collage. And I've got my pocket now, so I can put my couple in there, right? And I always like to grab, so these watercolor circles I've been using on everything. This is totally a Christie thing, but I love to place them behind people because it could be a really good word bubble, you know, if you wanted to write something. So I kind of like the peach. I kind of like the blue. I think I'm going to go with the blue. So I'm going to add that. And then these vintage flowers could be fun. Like, again, another thing to kind of add to your collage. Another texture. These branches, I just can't seem to get away from. And you don't always have to put stuff on top too when you're thinking. Like, sometimes you could put it underneath or on the bottom. You know, like there's a ton of ways to go. Especially if you're not super keen on your structure, it can still be there, but you can kind of cover it up a little bit so it's there, but not at the forefront. I can't decide. I mean, there's really no right way, but I kind of like that this is mirroring the white behind them. So I'm gonna add my little circle. Oopsie. Right here behind this guy. And I'm gonna do it fairly asymmetrically. So that way it leaves room for me to doodle or write on there if I want. And for my branch, I really like it there. And again, I'm just going to use some adhesive. Another way to add stuff is with staples, which can also have like a fun vintage feel. Also can just be a little bit faster. And you know, I don't cover the whole thing in adhesive. Like, I love to have just a little bit added there. And I love adding stamps as a final, like, I love stamps on the old collage pictures. It just adds like a little extra something. Vintage. I forgot my little stamp that I like to use. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so I'm just going to add these little stamps as a final bit. And these go very quickly, so it's a fun little project to work on when you want to be creative but you don't have a lot of time. I'm trying to get my daughter's attention to grab my stamp, but I can't seem to do that. Okay, and then finally, I always feel like I need words, so I might add some text here later, but real small. I'm just gonna write home on here. Just home. And again, with the Stabilo pencils, you can kind of really use it to smear and give a lot of depth to your pages. You know, it's just so fun. And like I said, it makes you look better than you are if you feel insecure about your arting. It's just such a cool feature to have. And there you have it. Home. A little assemblage. And again, I love these in journal pages. You can attach it with staples or some glue, but they also look really nice in a frame. And it could be like a lovely gift or something to put on your wall. And you know, I used arbitrary photos, but you could do vintage family photos. It's just such a fun way to add a little extra something to your art journaling. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and you can find me on Instagram at Megan_Wisner_Quinlan, and I have lots of videos on my IGTV there as well. Thank you.